All right, this is a demo for a data platform project. We will be going over the ingest portion of the project right now. This is a pandemic analytics project to discover trends in the COVID-19 outbreak. And for this project, we will be focusing mainly on the data engineering portion of it. Um, right now, we're going to look at ingesting the data. For this, we're going to be ingesting data from multiple sources. We are going to be ingesting data from the web using the HTTP transfer protocol. This data is from the ECDC website, and we'll also be ingesting data from our Azure Blob Storage. These are the two data sources we're going to be ingesting into our data pipeline, which we'll be creating in this step. All right, let's take a look at our Azure Data Factory and how it looks on the Azure portal. All right, let's take a look at the two pipelines that we have. Firstly, we have a pipeline for ingesting ECDC data, and then we have a pipeline for ingesting the population data. The pipeline since we're on this pipeline, let's take a look at it. Firstly, we check if the file exists, then we get the metadata. If the file doesn't exist, we want the pipeline to show that it was a failure, and this is how we can show that in Azure Data Factory. Okay, once we get the metadata for the file, we want to just process the file based on some conditions. So let's look at that. There are two activities. If it's true, then we want to copy the population data and then delete the file because we've processed it, basically. And if it's false, if it doesn't meet those conditions, then we want to send an email to the data engineers or whoever's in charge of the pipeline to let them know that the pipeline failed. All right, and then for the other pipeline, we have a pipeline that basically looks up an ECDC file list because we're processing not one but 4 files. So we look up the file list, and then for each file, we want to basically perform a certain action. Let's take a look at that. For each file, this is the action we want to perform. And this action is basically to copy the data from the official site into our data lake. So currently we've looked at the fact that we have 2 storage accounts. We have blob storage and we have a data lake. Next, we're going to go ahead and just run these pipelines and see. Okay, so let's start off with the pipeline to ingest the population data. So we need to check if the file exists. If it exists, we want to get the metadata, and based on some conditions, we want to copy the population data and delete the source file. Let's take a look at and make sure that the file does exist where it should exist. For that, let's look over to our Storage Explorer. All right, we can see in our Storage Explorer that the population data does exist. So we could go ahead and run the pipeline. All right, we've transitioned back into our Azure Data Factory screen. So let's go ahead. We don't have a trigger for this pipeline, so we can just trigger it now and run it manually. Okay, we click OK here, and we have that the pipeline is running. So let's take a look at the pipeline. We're going to go over to our monitor pane and look at the pipeline runs. This is what we currently have running. Let's take a look at it. All right, it's in process. Let's refresh a bit, and we see that we have some successes. So we have that the file does exist. We've gotten the metadata. We're checking the if condition, and then we're going to go ahead and populate and then we're going to go ahead and exit and complete what we have for that if condition. All right, so we copy the population data. We can take a look at it. We have that the data was sent. We had about 5 kilobytes of data that was read and 26 kilobytes was written. We have that was completed successfully. We could go ahead and reload this. And it seems we still have one thing remaining on our if condition to execute. Let's take a pause and come back to look at that. Okay, that has successfully completed. So we have that pipeline has run successfully. Great. We can refresh it. Everything looks successful. Let's go ahead and look at all the pipeline runs here. Refresh that, and we should have that this pipeline was successful. You can see the green tick. All right, let's go ahead and go back to what we had for the previous pipeline and take a look at it. All right, now for this pipeline, we do have some triggers. But before we look at that, let's just go ahead and take a look at our storage explorer. We should have that the file was deleted once we completed it. All right, so now we are in storage explorer. We're just going to go ahead and refresh it and see if the file truly was deleted. Yes, on refreshing it, we see that the file was deleted. So we see that our pipeline ran effectively. Let's go back and run the second pipeline now. For the second pipeline, we do have two triggers. So let's go ahead and see which trigger we're going to run. Let's run the tumbling window trigger. Let's go ahead and go over to our monitor section. Let's take a look at all the triggers we have. We see we have a lot of triggers, but we only have the ingest ECDC data one that has a green status that it started, it's currently running. So let's just go ahead and trigger it to run. We'll go back to one of the previous trigger runs for ACDC data. We'll just go ahead and rerun that. Okay, so now we have that it's currently running. Right, it's currently running. Let's refresh this and we see we have a pipeline over there for that. Let's take a look at the pipeline. We see that we were able to see that the file does exist, and now we're running the for each operation. All right. Currently, we're executing something for each of the files. We're moving that file from our storage blob container into our data lake. Let's this will take a minute to run, so we'll come back once it's done running. All right, so now we've successfully run this pipeline, and we've successfully run both pipelines that we had. Let's go back and take a look at the pipelines we just ran. So we ran the pipeline to ingest the ECDC data and to ingest the population data. Let's take a look at the data that we just ingested for the ECDC data and also the population data. Over here, we can see the ECDC data. We have cases and deaths. We have the country responses, and we can see the timestamp is for right now. And we can also take a look at the rather than the ECDC data, we can take a look at the population data also with the same timestamp because we just completed both operations. All right, that's all for this demo on ingesting the data. We looked at the two pipelines we used for ingesting the data. That's it. See you in the next one.